Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry's starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover, all for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter 5000 at checkout. That's harrys.com, code 5000. Enjoy.
News Talk, Saga 960. Also streaming live on saga960am.ca.
You are listening to New Theory Radio.
Hello and welcome to another edition of New Theory Radio, here live on News Talk, Saga 960 AM. My name is Nav Nanwa. I am your host, and this is the show where we theorize on all things current affairs, pop culture, and everyday life. And we have a jam-packed show lined up for this week's episode. I'm going to be joined by a plethora of different guests, and it's going to be a bit of a mixed bag, but I'm super excited because it's going to be a lot of engaging conversations. First and foremost, I'm going to be welcoming two representatives from Vision Brampton, Amol and Kamika. Both individuals are part of a fantastic initiative that's taking place on September 5th at the Brampton City Hall. It's a civic action forum that's going to be encouraging youth between the ages of 18 to 24 to go out and vote in the upcoming election. It's going to be fantastic. There's a bunch of different advocacy groups attached to this event, so I'm very excited to have both Kamika and Amol join me as we're going to be theorizing about two different topics. One about civic engagement and why it's so hard for youth within that age bracket to really get involved when it comes to elections, and I want to get their thoughts on just what that's all about and what would be the best way in getting the youth involved when it comes to getting their voices heard at various government levels. And then we're also going to theorize on the young vote. Yes, I put that in quotations as I say that, because I feel like nowadays every politician is always looking to get the young vote. And I wanted to get both of their perspectives regarding how politicians go about doing that. There's a couple of different ways I've seen just in my previous life when it comes to people pandering to young people and finding ways to get in front of them and relate to them. Some are authentic, some, in my opinion, are very inauthentic. And I want to get both Kamika and Amol to commentate on that and provide me their theories on an effective way to attract this audience. And then we're going to switch gears a little bit. I myself, and I think I can probably include my photographer, Amit, at Colorblind Photography on Instagram, in the same boat. We both have just come out of a busy weekend, last weekend, full of WWE Pro Wrestling. It was Summerslam weekend, and it was crazy. WWE was in town for 4 nights straight at the Scotiabank Arena, and there's a lot of different events taking place within Toronto. And I actually had the opportunity to attend the media day that took place last weekend, and I got a whole bunch of different interviews with various WWE superstars. Some include, Trish Stratus, who is a big legend in WWE, a Hall of Famer, and she's also from Toronto. So I had the pleasure of interviewing her, as well as interviewing a whole bunch of them. So we're going to be airing a couple of those interviews because we really theorized about a bunch of topics. We theorized about legacy. We theorized about being able to maximize your spot when it comes to opportunities. We also talked about females and just the role that they're playing in professional wrestling nowadays versus where they were a few years ago, as well as the whole industry of pro wrestling being way more inclusive. So you're not going to want to miss these conversations with a whole plethora of WWE pro wrestlers here on New Theory Radio. But before we get right into it, we are going to take another quick commercial break, and then when I come back, I'm going to be joined by Kamika and Amol from Vision Brampton, and we are going to start theorizing about civic engagement here on News Talk Saga 960. And we are back here on New Theory Radio on News Talk Saga 960 AM. My name is Nab Nanwa. I am your host. and it is about that time to start theorizing here on the show. As I mentioned earlier in the intro, we have a fantastic event coming up on September 5th at the City Hall in downtown Brampton, hosted by Vision Brampton and a number of different organizations that are affiliated with this cause. Really, it's a civic action forum encouraging youth between the ages of 18 to 24 to go out and vote. It's no secret that demo for the upcoming election is the biggest voting block. But historically, youth don't come out to the polls and don't get their voices heard. And I'm very excited to be joined by two individuals that are going to help me theorize not only about civic engagement, but also the young vote when it comes to attracting these individuals. I have first representing Vision Brampton as the planning and logistics coordinator. She is also a healthcare professional, is Kamika Sylvester. Kamika, thanks so much for coming on New Theory Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And we also have an affiliate of Vision Brampton. He runs a nonprofit called A Canada, and he's someone that works very closely with a lot of the municipal politicians, as well as working with some of the politicians that are going to be running in the upcoming federal election. It is Amol Dalla. Amol, thanks so much for joining us here on New Theory Radio.
Thanks for having me, Nat.
Awesome. So, you know what? First and foremost, maybe Kamika, I'll direct this question to you. What is Vision Brampton for those that aren't familiar with it? And what's the role that you guys are playing, especially when it comes to the federal election? Because I started to notice Vision Brampton quite a lot last year during the municipal election, and it really got my curiosity up regarding what your mission is as an organization.
So Vision Brampton, which was started a couple years ago by a couple, I'll say, I guess, racialized young people that have been involved in this sort of work in other areas, but decided that they wanted to kind of reclaim this narrative about Brampton and kind of put it on a positive trajectory. So they created this organization that's primarily in advocacy and just works in terms of mobilizing this age group to affect change in their community in a positive way. So their mandate is deeply rooted in equity, inclusion, and diversity, and kind of just making sure that our voices are heard at the municipal level, at the federal level, at the provincial level. And so as a group, if we can mobilize a bunch of these young people together underneath this mandate and kind of like make these politicians listen to us, then we'll be able to affect change in our communities and help kind of improve this negative stereotype that's been kind of existing for a long time about Brampton.
Especially because I find with 18-year-olds who get the right to vote as soon as they turn 18. I remember when I was 18, sure, there was some type of excitement associated with being able to vote, but I wasn't really informed what was going on. So a lot of people that I voted for at the time were people that my parents were voting for, and even then, I think my parents probably weren't making the best judgments as well, because a lot of them were probably basing their decisions on, I guess, people that were door knocking or people that their friends were people that their friends were voting for. So it's kind of a mixed bag, and that's why I love the fact that you guys are a youth organization that's really putting that to the forefront. What's been the reception like for Vision Brampton over the course of a year? Because it's been a year that you guys have been in existence, right?
Well, I can't really speak to that too well because I'm really newly involved with Vision Brampton, but to my knowledge, it's been really, really good. We've been able to pick up speed pretty quickly in terms of having a lot of people, like-minded people in the area, not really knowing how to get involved or how to kind of engage at this level. And kudos to our executive director and founder, Marilyn, for putting this group together and kind of allowing us to all connect and be able to find these avenues to engage with these politicians at this level and kind of do this sort of work in Brampton. But yes, you're right. Like you said, turning 18 and not really knowing how to engage, and that's a common problem that we're seeing. So one of the things that we wanted to do with Vision Brampton is kind of make politics more accessible to people of those age groups and make that information a lot easier to obtain. Because I know my first time voting, I was like, I don't know who to vote for.
Yeah.
And my mom was kind of very big on like, you need to kind of do your research and figure it out. I didn't even know how to do the research at that time and what even I should have been looking for. So I really wish Vision Brampton was around when I was like a first time voting, because it would have been a lot easier to kind of tap in to that information.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because I found even when you think about politics and just some of the language that's used in a lot of the policies or a lot of the platforms for an 18-year-old who's probably finishing up high school or going into university or college or maybe even going into the workplace. Some of that can be intimidating, where you might not know exactly what some of these things mean that you're reading or that you're hearing, and all of a sudden there is a bit of a tune-out factor in regards to, hey, this doesn't really relate to me. And that's what I found. Some of the challenges that I faced when I was first voting for the very first time when I turned 18 years ago, because I'm definitely beyond 18 now. But Amol, you are an affiliate of Vision Brampton. You run your own nonprofit called A Canada that services entrepreneurs. We've seen the entrepreneurial sector within Peel, specifically also within Brampton, really blow up, and that seems to be one of the sectors that a lot of politicians are targeting when it comes to getting support, when it comes to making things happen. How would you explain sort of your journey in creating your nonprofit, and how did you get invested into politics?
So it's kind of so when I started my nonprofit, A Canada, was about 2 years ago. And the issue we had then was a lot of the young entrepreneurs didn't know where to start. They have these ideas, these people around me, they have these amazing projects they want to work on, or just their school projects they worked on. And I wanted to create a platform for them to connect with people that can make their projects a reality, turn them into commercial products or just something that can make life easier. And through this nonprofit, we were able to help over 500 aspiring entrepreneurs. So we've engaged with a lot of these young entrepreneurs, and me getting involved into politics kind of just came out at last year at the municipal politics when I was working, doing an internship with Startup Peel at Brampton City Hall, and I got involved with some city councillors, and it kind of got me to think about a lot of the issues that we have at the municipal level and how they affect us. And this kind of like in terms of entrepreneurship. A lot of them come out to these entrepreneurship events and they want to talk about how they support these entrepreneurs, and we do have programs at our provincial level that do speak to their commitments and the budgets that they have, and it's good that because these small businesses are creating a lot of jobs in Brampton and throughout Peel, so it's nice to see that a lot of politicians supporting these small businesses, and they are the core of our economy. So it is it's nice to see them support our entrepreneurship kind of like community, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's the thing too, because I found, like, for me, and again, part of my ignorance here, but I didn't actually get fully invested into municipal Brampton politics till when I used to be a TV host on Rogers TV, and I would moderate a lot of debates and discussions with some of these candidates. And then that was a time when the LRT conversation was taking place in Brampton, and that was probably one of the first times that I saw a lot of youth getting invested into municipal politics. And then I found that as the years went by, even last year, we started to see more of it. But then every time you'd see the results of the election, you'd always see that voter turnouts were never the best. So I wanted to start things off. Like, I'd love to get both your theories on civic engagement and why you feel that even though we live in the age now where information is so readily available to us, why is it that individuals, specifically the youth that are between the ages of 18 and 24, which will make the largest voting bloc in the upcoming election, why they're just not invested, like why they're not going out to the actual polls? Like, is it a sense of laziness, or is it just a sense of defeat? Because I know a lot of youth can sometimes feel defeated if they feel like they're not being represented. And maybe, Kamika, you can jump on that one.
I feel like it's a number of things. First of all, I feel like within that age group, politics can kind of be a bad word, or like saying that you're into politics, it's kind of like taboo.
Yeah,
it's like you don't want to even get into those types of conversations. So I feel like it's been up until that age where you're allowed to vote, I feel like it's kind of been very removed in terms of it's always been something that for like the older people.
Yeah.
And like we're not at that age yet. And then boom, you turn 18 and now you're kind of like, well, now I have to do something or I have to vote. But it's never been something that I've been able to engage in or access. So it's kind of like a steep learning curve that I feel like a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds don't kind of engage or take the time to even to learn about it.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like a lot of times there's this attitude that your vote is kind of futile. Like voting, it's not something that you can necessarily see the direct impact from that one vote if you're not informed. Whereas, like, I feel like youth our age are more inclined to volunteer and do other forms of civic engagement that you can see the fruits of your labor. It's more tangible. You can see the people that you're helping or that you're working with when you're volunteering. But when you vote, it's kind of in a grand scheme of things that affects other people. So I feel like we're less inclined to be like, oh, like my vote doesn't matter, or it doesn't really matter if I don't vote. But what we're seeing is like a bunch of people with that attitude is creating like a huge ripple effect in terms of like, well, if everyone has this attitude of like, if my vote doesn't matter, why should I vote? Well, that now it matters because like there's the numbers there. So I think that's part of it.
To your point, it's like this feeling of being jaded. Like it's before you even decide to walk to the poll, it's you feel like what you're doing is not going to make any impact.
Yeah.
And that's always unfortunate because for me, like I think about 18-year-olds in high school, and one of the biggest things that takes place in high school are like the student council elections and how those become big popularity contests, and there's obviously a sense of wanting to vote in those types of elections that are so local, like that are so conducive to your school because they're probably touching on things that deal with you directly. But I don't know, like it's tough because then the youth start feeling like the system's against them, right?
Definitely. I feel like there's also this attitude that the results of politics don't directly impact me, so why should I care?
Yeah.
However, I feel like what we're seeing now with like new changes of government, I think this year, I think it was this year, or it's been a while now, but they did a walkout in high schools in Brampton.
Yeah.
And I have a cousin in high school, and when I asked him, like, why are you walking out? He was like, everyone else is doing it, so why? I don't want to go to class kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think that was a really good opportunity, and I feel like we have one even with our event to kind of capitalize on that, because I feel like we're seeing a lot of the effects of politics kind of trickling down to even cuts in OSAP and just things that are affecting people within that age group. So it's like kind of forcing you to care, because it's like, well, now this is affecting like how much money I'm going to get to go to school, the teachers that are going to be teaching in the high schools, even down to healthcare. So I think now we're kind of seeing it where it's like, okay, this stuff is affecting me and it kind of matters, but what do I do about it? Because I've had this attitude for so long, but I want to get involved, but I don't know how. So that's where we're hoping Vision Brampton kind of steps in and we can kind of bridge that gap.
I love the fact that you brought up the school walkout example, because it's one thing to ask, your cousin, why'd you walk out? Everyone else is doing it. But I think one would hope that if you were to ask your cousin in October, hey, why are you going out to vote? Everyone else is doing it. Like, you would hope that behavior will translate. Amol, when it comes to working with entrepreneurs or even working with the youth, because you mentioned actually off air that you do a lot with the municipal council when it comes to youth engagement. What is the sense that you get from a lot of youth when it comes to why they're not inclined to vote? And is there anything you think that could entice them to do that?
Honestly, I think the biggest reason a lot of young people don't vote is because they're lazy. It's a big reason, because just think about it, the voter even though they're all day, like a lot of people don't know you can get rides. Like, if they advertise the political parties, you can get a ride for whoever you want to vote for. They can drive you to the voting polls and you can vote for them and they'll drive you back. Yeah. As simple as that, right? But a lot of them don't want to wake up, they don't want to get dressed, get out of the house. It's as simple as that, right? And like a lot of young generation, like I guess it's kind of like a stereotype too. They are lazy, but at the same time, there are students, there are youth that want to get out there and they want to get involved. They are hustlers. Like Vision Brampton is a great example. We have over 15.
I think almost 20.
Yeah, so about 20 youth organizations that are involved with this, and that's hundreds of young people who want to see change in the community. So like one of the things we see a lot is why people are not, how the young audience is not very involved, is because they don't know the opportunities that are available to them. Like one of the biggest issues we see at the city level is that the disconnect between the city and the younger groups. It's because like a lot of the marketing, I guess, done by the city, they pay newspapers to kind of get the message out. They're using these platforms that the younger audience isn't really on, so they don't really get to hear about the stuff that's going on in politics and stuff like that. So I guess that's starting to change. A lot of the city now has this thing just started last year. Now they now have an Instagram account. Before that didn't. I sat in a meeting with one of them. I recommended Instagram is really important if you want to engage with the younger audience, and from there we started using Instagram a lot more, just city staff, and there's a lot going on Instagram. This is one of these small examples that's happening, right? And with this upcoming election, that's going to change a lot. There's going to be a lot of new platforms. There's going to be a lot of platforms for young people that are going to be more invested in. Yeah,
because to your point, you almost have to be where they are, but then you also have to make sure that depending on if you are on Instagram, that you're talking to them in an Instagram fashion. Not to say that you want to see politicians taking selfies and posting food photos. Yeah. But no, I like that. I like that thinking of being more inclusive by tapping into what their interests are. I don't know, part of me feels like if they just enable online voting, do you think that would help? Think about how many people in an Instagram story that will vote on the most obnoxious polls. If you were able to tap into a mechanism like that for the upcoming election, do you think that would work?
100%. But I think there's obviously other logistical things as why. But we definitely live in a generation, a very I need in my hands, Twitter fingers, Uber Eats generation, where it's kind of I want to do everything from the comfort of my couch with my phone down to every aspect of our life, what we eat, where we go, how we engage with our friends. So I think, Emil said, we can be very lazy sometimes in terms of we actually have to physically go out of our way to vote. And if it's something that we don't deem as important, we're not going to make that effort. So I think that's kind of what we're battling right now, is trying to just at the very foundation, at the very base level, just get people to care enough to make that extra effort, just because we do know that I don't see online voting coming in anytime soon. But I think for the future that could be something that could be explored. But I think for now we're just we just got to get you guys to care and get people out of the house to actually vote. Because
all that kind of opens up the can of worms around privacy.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a problem. It's
and hacking and things like that.
And again, we've seen what's happened with our neighbors down south when it comes to getting technology involved and whatnot. Just the impact it can have. So when it comes to the event on September 5th, what does success look like? For both of you, either being on Vision Brampton or being an affiliate. What would you want to see? Because the election is the election is October 3rd, I believe, right?
Yeah, so for us, success would look like having a room full of youth and young people from different backgrounds, different areas, different sectors coming together, engaging in our different workshops for different levels of interest in politics, and then also kind of everybody showing out to the debate and actually getting to interact with these candidates and ask the hard-hitting questions, but also be in the room to hear their responses to some of the questions that our partners as well as people in the crowd are going to be able to ask them. So I think for us, it's just success is just having those numbers and having people from all areas come out, and not just those that I guess are kind of tapped into this world already. We're really looking to expand our outreach to those who may have not in the past really cared about politics. We're just really want people hey, if you are gung-ho about this, bring maybe 5 people who aren't, but who are hey, if you'll drive me, I'll come. Just being in the room, and just once we have the bodies in the room, we're really sure that we can kind of engage them at where they're at, and then also show them hey, that this is something that you should care about. This is something that affects you, and we're here to support you and help you make it, help this be more accessible to you.
Yeah, and what I found great about the event too is the people that you're tapping into. You're not just tapping into politicians that are running, but you're tapping into musicians, artists, entrepreneurs. Amol, when it comes to that type of thinking, what do you hope to gain with that when it comes to getting people involved that aren't necessarily your political types? Because, Kamika, to your point, the word politics at that age is kind of blah, or kind of not the most enticing word. Like, no one wants to think about politics when they're trying to, grow up and have a good time, right? Yeah. So, Amol, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Yeah, so like one of the biggest things at the city that we've been working with, we've been asked to do is, because we know that most of the people that are going to apply to these youth councils, or these youth groups that are being created by the city, are going to be the ones that are doing good in school, that are already involved in the community. It's going to be that groups that's going to be applying, that's going to try to get involved the most. But then how do we get the people that are not so involved in the community? How do we bring them out? How do we get the people that are in arts and they don't know what's happening at City Hall? How do we get them involved? And to work with that is, there are different organizations that we target, that we reach out to get these people involved. One of the biggest ones are like a religious community center. It's because a lot of people, whatever their faith is, they will get involved there, and we reach out to these centers, and we try to get as many people as involved as we can from and try to get as many diverse backgrounds, as many as we can, and this is pretty much just like it just comes down to just people that we target, that we're trying to get involved, and just like, if we're trying to set up a community hub, or like just like a youth group, it depends on who's leading it, because like the city strategy is kind of called for youth by youth. So I know the two girls that are leading the youth strategy at the city of Brampton. They're fairly young. So they kind of know how to engage with youth and what youth are looking for. They're kind of interactive, right? So it's kind of just comes down to kind of like who the leadership is, what their goals are, in terms of what you're trying to achieve, right? Well, then to that point, because you mentioned about 20 organizations are involved with the event on August 5th, which I think is fantastic, because I think when I saw the roster of who's involved, actually some people are actually past guests of this show, which is great. It's really a who's who of people that are very passionate about growing the city of Brampton, but they're not necessarily political advocacy groups. Like, they're groups that are more so focused around maybe doing cool things in the city of Brampton, or maybe fostering more arts and culture. So how did you, like, what was the strategy when it came to engaging these groups? Like what was if you have any insight regarding the actual identification of these groups and being able to approach them and getting them on board, like what was Vision Brampton looking for and making sure that they were tapping into the right people?
So we're really big on Brampton pride, and we kind of use that as like a basis to be like, okay, like who is in the city doing great things within their respective fields or sectors, because at the end of the day, like, politics is kind of like in the background of everything, whether you want to admit it or not, because politics is tied to funding. Funding is tied. You need funding for programming and development to do a lot of the initiatives that a lot of these groups want to do. So we kind of, through our own respective networks among Vision Brampton, where a lot of us are involved in different things in different areas of our lives, and we've been tapping into different people, and it's like, hey, like, this is a group that I've heard of, this is what they're doing in Brampton to kind of, like I said, reclaim Brampton and kind of like go against this negative stereotype that exists. And so then what we did is, like, we said, okay, like, let's get all of these people in a room and kind of talk to them about what their respective mandates are. What is it that they want to do?
It's kind of like the UN.
Yeah, kind of like a UN.
I love it.
And just be like, what is it that you want to do? Because we want to support you, and all of us at the end of the day are just trying to create a better Brampton for all of us who live here in different areas in different ways. And being involved in civic engagement is a way that we can all strategically come together and being able to push as a collective to get what we want, in terms of getting the politicians to listen and pay attention, to be like, hey, these are people across the board in different areas who are based in Brampton, who all have this shared, shared mandate or shared desire for us to be inclusive, for us to be equity-minded. And when we were able to do that and kind of get people to sign on and be like, yeah, like, even though like it may be a little bit abstract in terms of thinking for them, to be like, well, this is kind of a little bit different than what we do, but at the basis, we all want the same thing. It's
very like reminiscent to me of when George W. Bush was in power at the U.S. and he had like P. Diddy start Vote or Die. And for someone who was a music fan, it was like, oh, okay, these musicians are really caring about politics all of a sudden, and everyone started wearing like Vote or Die T-shirts and all that. It's kind of a similar approach, because you guys are tapping into organizations, again, to your point, that maybe are, maybe their mandates are to improve the city of Brampton, but they're not necessarily activists, or they're not going out to the streets, pestering local politicians.
Exactly.
Like, they're just focused on making the city better, which I truly love. I think that's fantastic, because I think when you start seeing your peers, and these are your peers, get civically engaged, I think it does change the narrative a bit.
Yeah, it kind of plants a seed.
It does. It does.
And be like, well, hey, like, why do you care about this? Kind of in conversation, like, and listening to your peers be like, well, like, this is going to sound so corny, but like, it's cool to vote. Like,
it totally is.
It's cool to vote, because that is the only way that we can kind of really push and get things done at the municipal level, at the federal level, to get the things that we need infrastructurally. So we're trying to just really, really push and be like, hey, like, even with my cousin, just like when you turn around and ask your friend, why are you walking out of class? And they're like, or why are you voting? Why aren't you voting?
Exactly.
That's what I kind of want the reply to be.
I love it.
So that's what we're really pushing for.
Obviously, right now in the upcoming federal election, we've seen a couple of what I like to call them fringe parties that have been creeping up, whether it's the People's Party, whether it's Kamika's getting interested, whether it's even the Green Party. The Green Party is not a fringe party, but even the Green Party is getting a lot of support. People are predicting even the Green Party to have more votes than the NDP this year, because of just the platform that they're running on. What is your perspective? And again, I'm just throwing it out there. Obviously, the whole goal is to get youth engaged and youth to vote. But if you find that a youth between the ages of 18 and 24 is steering their point of view to one of these other non-big parties outside of the big three, do you feel like that's still good in the sense that they're getting civically engaged, or do you think that there's an opportunity to become more informed?
I think, well, first of all, we're nonpartisan, so we're not here to push any one candidate's specific agenda.
Yeah.
We just have a mandate of equity and inclusion, and we're here to just kind of push that up to them and be like, hey, this is what we think is important. What are you going to do to like improve? Well, specifically Brampton.
So you're still empowering them to make a decision.
Empowering. So we're more so about like, we just want you to be civically engaged and informed and have all the facts. We can't tell you who to vote for. We can't tell you like, hey, like this isn't necessarily a party that you should be like thinking to be associated with. Like, that's not what our role is. Our role is just being like, let's give you the facts. Let's put you in spaces where you can engage and kind of make those decisions for yourself based on what it is you think is important.
Yeah.
But we just know that we have our organization's mandate, and our goal is to kind of like also show like which political candidates are taking our mandate into consideration and kind of are going to be the ones affecting change, and then be like, hey, these are the people who are aligned with what we think is important. Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
So we're really just kind of here in the background, really advocating and pushing, just get involved, get informed, and vote.
What I actually love about that is the fact that you guys have a mandate of parameters that you guys are very passionate about. anyone that you decide to engage in these debates, and there are a number of different debates taking place on September 5th, right? There's one big one, right?
There's one big debate that we're running at our event.
Yeah.
In the earlier part of our event, we're going to have different sessions.
Yes.
So more smaller groups, kind of split everybody into hopefully 3 and kind of engage them in different conversations based on where they're at.
Love it.
So our panel that we're going to hopefully have you a part of will kind of just be like, what does it look like in terms of non-political leadership and just community engagement in general? So you don't have to be like super, super political or super knowledgeable, but it's just kind of like, this is why this is important, even in general, and what it looks like in your community.
It's actually a cool little primer before they get into the deep conversation. And I was telling you guys off air, like I was pseudo a part of the organization of a youth-style debate for the 2014 elections. Actually, the Labby at the time was the one that was leading it, and we had 4 of the biggest mayoral candidates on board. Actually, my homie Jamila Gamble emceed it. And what was fantastic is I think there was like over 100 youth that just came out. And again, there was obviously a lot going on from a municipal standpoint. Brampton was starting to get on this little wave of interest where a lot of the youth that lived in Brampton wanted to see things happen in the city. But then you had the LRT debate and a whole bunch of different things that were taking place. But it was a strong statement regarding how passionate the youth can be when it comes to getting involved. And I love the fact that for this event on September 5th that you guys are starting it off by engaging in conversation before they sort of jump right into the topics at hand, because I think that conversation will allow for better understanding. Definitely.
Because a lot of times it's like, first of all, if I've never been interested in politics, the thought of like sitting down at a debate about things that I'm like people that I've never seen or heard of, and if I don't even know anything about like how it's set up in terms of like the parties and the ridings and things like that, it'll kind of just be. It won't be really a good use of... Yeah, just go over your head. Yeah, it'll just go right over your head. So, like, we're just kind of like, okay, we want to have something that no matter what level you're at or where you're at, kind of understanding this area, like, there's something for you. And there's people that you can engage with at your own level as well. And then we can have this big debate event that you'll kind of be, like, primed for in a bit, that you can... engage in a really, really good way. That's actually a great segue to the next topic that I want to theorize about here on New Theory Radio, and that is the young vote. Amol, you talked about last year being obviously involved in the municipal elections with different candidates when it comes to youth engagement. I've seen, when it comes to attracting the young vote, I've seen it done in many different ways. Some ways that are good, some ways which are just flat out bad. And I think the bad ones really stand out because it's really politicians who are trying their hardest to relate to this demographic, but are going about it the wrong way possible. Whether it's showing up to a youth event and asking for time to speak, or whether it's pretending to be a fan of a certain genre or artist, or trying to build street cred. We've seen street cred pop up a lot, especially when you look at the Democratic election that's going on in the U.S. right now as they try to get a Democratic candidate. We've seen a lot of these different candidates try to pander to the young vote, assuming, hey, I do this, I do that, I'm pretty cool, right? It is dicey, and to me, I do find the youth to be the type of individuals that, you do something that's totally left field, you will honestly lose them. Like they won't come back. Cancel culture is real. Cancel culture is totally real. So, Amol, I wanted to get your perspective on what are some tactics that you've seen that have worked, and what are some tactics that you think were just not good at all?
Some of the simplest ones is like just volunteers. So when you do get involved with politics, a lot of them, you get into politics, you kind of see you're door knocking for someone or something like that. It can be through a relative, your parents, they're involved with one of the politicians. They're like, okay, you should get involved with them. You get involved with them, you start volunteering, right? And then from there, you start seeing like a big push. Either you're volunteering with liberals or conservatives or any party that you're kind of volunteering with. You get to understand their agenda in and out. Because when you're door knocking, they kind of train you on how to answer these questions in terms of what's happening with their party. to what their agenda is. So you kind of get a big push from one side, and you only get to learn from what the other side is, what their goals are, what their agenda is. So when you kind of learn that, then you start, you go to school, you start telling your friends about it, you start posting on your social media, and just kind of like the biggest, I think one of the biggest ways is just volunteering. So they have like a lot of a lot of volunteers. So like hundreds of volunteers that come out, most of them from high school, because they need their volunteer hours. So you need volunteer hours, 40 volunteer hours to graduate, so they can get them in one election.
Yeah, then that's usually the entryway for a lot of them to get involved in campaigns. It is an easy way to get the hours that are necessary. And the one thing I've kind of noticed over the last, I would say, few elections is you've actually had politicians like turn their offices into community spaces. I know Jagmeet Singh and his brother Garathan have done that. I believe Harkirat, who's currently on council, I believe he did that as well as a way to foster that. I find that to be a really interesting strategy because it's like you're surrounded by youth that aren't necessarily at the age to vote, but you're almost building that allegiance and foundation at an early age that hopefully resonates to their parents, because at the end of the day you're kind of babysitting the kids at the same time. Something like that. I don't know. Like I found that to be a unique strategy. What do you guys think of that? You think that's an effective way to go about it?
I definitely think it can be effective in terms of having those people in your space and being able to engage them in this world, even if it is a little bit prematurely. But once again, planting a seed, really important, because then they'll go home, hopefully talk to their parents about like, well, what do you think about this party? And just like, even just starting that conversation, even if it is before they can vote, is really, really good in terms of like getting them to kind of start thinking about, how do I get informed, asking the right questions, and learning to kind of navigate that space early on. I think like a lot of the tactics, like you said, they definitely vary from with different levels of effectiveness.
I feel like you got some hot takes on this.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of politicians don't do their research when it comes to what the youth want and engaging. I feel like you can kind of categorize them into those that are super, super gung-ho about getting involved, like the student council presidents of their high school. And those that have kind of already have a taste of what that looks like in that level. And then you have those that are just like, I'm just chilling. I'm just out here. I play sports. I do whatever else. That's not my thing. But I don't think they always do a good job of getting a good mix of those people, because like, their attitudes and what they want and what they care about are different. And so a lot of times, like, I feel like the latter population is a lot larger in terms of those who are not really involved and engaged, but they're not necessarily engaging them to figure out what they want. So I feel like a lot of times their efforts kind of fall flat. And like you mentioned earlier, kind of in the intro to this segment, about like showing up to different events. And
it's not that easy.
It's not that easy to just show up. I think sometimes they like to put on a show and not necessarily just talk to them. Just get out, show up to an event and just mingle, just like someone in the crowd, and just be like, oh, hey, like, what is it that you care about? What is it that you want to see? And then kind of having those conversations at that level are really, really valuable, as opposed to getting up on a stage, lights, camera, action with a photo op. And it's like, well, you didn't really learn anything about me in that moment. I learned some things about you, but you didn't have an opportunity to like engage with me at that level. So I think sometimes they kind of can miss the mark when it comes to looking at like what is it actually that you're looking to do, and how you're going to do that in an effective way.
It's almost like a sleazy salesman approach, because when you show up to an event or to anything and you assume, hey, all I need to do is just say a couple words, they'll remember my face, they'll see my name on a ballot, it's a done deal. Like, you're really missing the personal connection aspect, which is what you just which is what you just mentioned. And like, I remember, like, I put on different events in the community, and I've seen politicians get involved. And you know what? by all means, like when it comes to funding, sometimes you have to let these individuals get involved. But the effective ways that I've seen it where it actually resonates with me are the ones that sometimes don't want to speak, and they just want to feel the crowd. They want to talk. They want to just mix and mingle. They want to learn what the event is about. I've had politicians show up and say, don't even take a photo of me. I'm just here to kind of suss it out. Just wanted to engage, want to see what's going on, what like the feeling of the youth is. And that's what really matters, I think, in my view, is sure, you want the photo op, sure, you want the speaking opportunity, but I think to give it that extra layer, I think you really need to understand what's going on and what's tapping into these interests. Something that Amol, that you touched about before was really around interest and tapping into them. I guess what I'm trying to say is, and you guys are obviously doing a great work with the September 5th panel and actually getting it in front of 20 different organizations and other attendees that are within that age demographic to really hold these people accountable. But what would be a piece of advice that you would give a politician who's probably ramping up? It's about 6 weeks until, we all hit the polls. If they really want to tap into the 18 to 24-year-old demo, what would be, I guess, a strategy that you would apply to make sure that they were set up for success?
Honestly, something super simple is do a survey. Just do like a group study and get your volunteers to connect with their friends. Just understand the real issues that youth care about, and then focus on those. When you're trying to engage with youth, so just like get volunteers, make out a survey, interact with them one-on-one, set up your own youth events. You don't have to go to other youth events. You can set up your own youth events, interact with them, and learn what they really want, because every different groups are going to want different things. They have different needs, right? So this kind of just comes down to this, like a data type of point, like a data thing, right? So do you know what the younger audience wants? All right, so it's kind of just I think that's about like the top advice, I guess, from my perspective would be, is to just learn about what they want.
Can be great.
I would say leverage social media. Like, social media is huge right now, and like you guys were saying earlier, like some, like even like the city and things like that didn't even have like social media accounts until like recently, and I think like that's kind of one way that a lot of them are kind of like missing opportunities to engage. Like not every single, but a lot of us have like our phones in our hand or glued to us like all the time. So like leveraging that, like even if you have like some sort of youth team being like, hey, put a poll on your Instagram and collate all those responses from each. If you say like have 100 volunteers with you and ask them to all engage with those that they have on social media and then report back, you could pull so many things from that, and just kind of leveraging that and getting really creative in terms of not thinking about it in a traditional way. Like we're a very, I think, outside of the box generation. And the way we do things, we're very creative in the way that we approach things nowadays. So I think that they kind of have to match that in a way and not do things so traditionally. Like leveraging social media for me is like really, really good. And also like doing a really good job about showing up to events where youth are, but actually just engaging with them. Because I'm more likely to remember like meeting somebody in the crowd and ending up talking to like a candidate than like you going on stage and just blurting out a couple things about like your platform points. And then me telling my friends like, hey, I spoke to so-and-so. It's like, oh, really? Like that word of mouth, I think, is really, really good as well. Yeah,
I actually still remember when I was like 19 or 20, opening the door and seeing a politician that was running in my area, actually for a party that I've never voted for, but it resonated with me because I opened the door and I had a good conversation with this person, like for 5-10 minutes. Like it was one of those things where she was able to ask me questions, I was able to ask her. And again, being, I guess I was 20 or 21 at the time, it was one of those things where I was like, man, that really like resonated with me to the point where, I did end up voting for her because it was just that personal connection that I had. She didn't end up winning, but for me, I think that moment has always stuck with me because then now when it comes to any election, it's more personal versus like party allegiance, I would say. And obviously in the municipal election there isn't parties, but a lot of people that I would vote for were people that actually spent time with me and had a conversation, or I actually physically met and vibed with. And you brought up earlier about tapping into your team and making sure that they are able to build a strategy for you. I wanted to just throw this out there for the both of you. Do you feel like anybody who's running in the upcoming election in 6 weeks, do you think it's imperative that they have like a youth strategy person on their team? And do you think that's really necessary when it comes to getting your campaign ready?
I think it is imperative to have a youth arm, I guess, of your platform.
Yeah.
Just because, like you said, like 18 to 24, we are going to be a very, very powerful force when it comes to voting in this upcoming election. So you have to consider us when you're kind of making your promises or developing your platform and your campaign, because we're the ones that need to be engaged and that need to be listened to. So you definitely need to have someone on your team who is able to help you strategize and be like, how can I reach these people, and how can I engage them in a way that is meaningful to them, but is also meaningful for the candidate as well. So definitely, I think it's imperative.
Yeah, Emil, what are your thoughts? Actually, that's pretty much you, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm kind of biased.
Yeah.
On that, so I would say yeah. So because youth are like a different type of, they're always evolving. So whatever the trends are on, whatever's going on, it's always evolving on how to interact with youth. It's always changing. So you kind of have to be like always doing your research. Like it's like a general audience, it's like same stuff, focus on the same issues or whatever's in the community. But for youth, the issues are always changing because there's always a new stuff and going on in school or whatever. Like for example, like when the reason everyone has to kind of vote for, I don't know if you remember, but or if you know, there are student trustee elections. Like there are student trustees that are high school students, and the reason, like a lot of them, everyone participates because they have to vote. They don't really have a choice. Like they can not write it, but they get a ballot in their hand.
Yeah.
When they go to school, everyone goes to class. So when you go to class, you sit down, you get a ballot, you fill out whoever you want to vote for, and then you give it back to your teacher. So you don't really have a choice. You don't have to go out of your way to kind of go vote or anything like that. It's given to you. Like it's part of your day, right? So it's kind of just like having that youth strategist person it's kind of just like someone that knows. You're gonna have to be, when you pick that person, you're going to have to know what their background is. Do they actually understand what the youth wants? Like, how do you engage with youth? It's kind of like what my company does.
Yeah.
I guess so. It's kind of like...
it's like a good commercial for you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like, that was like part of the reason why I started the company a couple of years back, was because there isn't really any company that focuses just on youth. It's kind of like what we've been doing. So it's kind of... if a youth strategist, you have to be like really data focused.
Yeah, no,
right?
Totally. And that's where it matters the most, right? You can't just, again, go to events or assume if I start, a Facebook page that there's my strategy. It's really around analytics and tapping into the interests. And again, if I'm a politician, am I tapping into SixBuzz? Because that's where I know a lot of people are, right? Am I tapping into some of these meme sites? But in a way that works for me. I guess no politician ever wants to be a meme. I remember there was a situation last year, because I did moderate the municipal debates for the Brampton Board of Trade, and one of the clips, wasn't me, but my voice was in the background. One of the clips ended up on, I think, Bramley Road or SixBuzz, and I thought it was kind of funny. It's like, oh, there's my voice. It's on one of those meme sites. But then I was like, for the politician, it's horrible.
Yeah,
like, it's horrible. So I guess you just got to be careful. But I don't know. Like, I'm very curious to see what happens, because I remember just to throw some predictions out there, like the fact that in 2015 it was a red wave, and this year. And part of the red wave I found, because Justin was a lot younger, that's what really attracted a lot of youth, because they were like, okay, he's one of us. And I remember he did make his rounds specifically in Brampton quite a bit to really engage with a lot of the youth here. I'm curious to see now, because you have Justin, you have a charismatic leader in Jagmeet Singh, you have these other parties that are popping up. just where this all goes and just how each of these parties or individuals are going to be tapping into this demographic. Because, to your guys' point, I think we've been beating this one up for quite a bit, but the fact that the demo between 18 and 24 is the largest voting group, I think that could potentially, sway the election.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see some really good turnout from that group. But I think a lot of times, like when we do see like those young, charismatic leaders, we do kind of feel like we can connect. Like, hey, like you understand. Like, I feel like when you have people who are a lot older, it's kind of like our issues are different. Like, at 20 or like 18, I'm not worried about a pension plan. Like, I'm not worried about all these other things that
even though it's probably being deducted from your paycheck.
Yeah,
like,
even though I'm just like, now that you're as a young professional, I'm kind of seeing like pension plans and EIs and all these other things.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, that you don't think about when you're younger. But I think like having those leaders that we feel like we can connect with, or that they more recently went through a stage of life that we went through.
Yeah.
So like they'd be more able to like understand what our needs are and be able to like advocate for those needs in power, like if they are elected into power. So I do think that plays a factor in terms of like who people vote for, in terms of like who's that face of that party. So yeah, this election is going to be interesting. I'm hoping that we can kind of get everybody onto this wave and being like, hey, like get informed, get out there, vote, and see what happens.
Hey, yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a big wave, and I know kudos to Vision Brampton and the both of you for being a part of it. I want to thank the both of you actually for being on New Theory Radio. This was a fantastic conversation. And Kamika, take it away. What should people know about September 5th? It's actually creeping up. We're about 3 weeks out, but it's a gigantic event. I know you guys are going to make a statement, so just feel free to plug it right now.
Yes, so the Vision Brampton Civic Action Forum, we want everyone to come out, bring your friends, bring your family members, even if you have to drag people, we want you to just bring people out to come out. When you go on our Eventbrite, if you follow us at Vision Brampton, you can see the links to our event page there. When you do register, you can pick one of the 3 panels ahead of time. There's a little descriptions listed there as well, so that when you come, we'll have some refreshments there, so it's always good when there's food involved. And then actually,
you always got to incentivize.
Yeah, we always got to incentivize. There's going to be people, like you said, from different areas, from musicians to entrepreneurs, just anything. We're trying to pull people out that you'll be able to relate to, converse with, and then coming out to our debate where you'll be able to actually put faces to the candidates in your ridings from all the parties and be able to actually engage with them and listen to some of the hard-hitting questions, and also hopefully get a chance to ask them yourself. So
actually, for the debates, is it like one big debate, or do you have it split up by riding?
So no, we're as of now, we're going to just have one big debate.
Like all Candace debate?
Yeah, so we're going to, we're still kind of working things out. But as of now, that's kind of like our plan, just to have everybody there and be able to allow you to have some FaceTime with them as well.
Awesome.
And there will be opportunities before then to just like mix and mingle with different people in the room while you like enjoy like some refreshments as well. So you never knew who you'll bump into and get to talk to.
There you go.
So yeah, just come out, even if politics is not your thing. Like we've been kind of talking about today, like it is the basis for everything in every aspect of our life, whether you know that now or whether you'll know that later, but it's definitely important to get involved. Even bring your parents, just if they need to drive you. So we just want...
I feel like that's the one thing that we fully have decided upon or have agreed upon during this show is the people between 18 and 24, just they have to be like driven by Uber or driven by their parents to get somewhere.
Definitely to come out. So we're just like, you know what? Just register online. We're really pushing. We want people to register this week and just show up, register your friends, even if they don't know they're coming yet. They're coming September 5th. 5:30, come on down. We're going to be at Brampton City Hall.
Amazing.
So it's going to be a fantastic event, and we just can't wait to see everybody there and get the opportunity to engage with everyone. So
awesome. Yeah. So I urge you to go check out the Vision Brampton event. It's going to be fantastic. Amol, I have a quick business idea for you before we wrap up.
Yes, sir.
Have you heard of Open Care? Open Care is a system where if you use their website to book a dentist appointment, you get a free gift card. So I think what someone in your network needs to work on is if they vote, they have potential to get a free gift card. Because that would entice people to vote.
100%. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So
Actually, we're working on something similar.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Where young
Amazing.
people are kind of getting paid to vote.
Really? Wow.
So it's going to be...
It's like an incentivized system?
Yeah, kind of. So it's going to be pretty... It's not going to be like legit they're not getting paid to vote because that buying votes is illegal.
Yeah.
So, it's not going to be about that, but it's something kind of like they're getting paid to kind of just get out there. They don't have to vote for one specific person. They can vote for whoever they want. We're kind of working on the business model, just working out some little things. So to
That's
make
cool,
sure.
man.
Yeah, so we're just kind of working on something like that where young people are going to have an incentive to come out and vote. And which is money, and people love money.
Yeah,
so
especially this demographic loves incentives, and I think any way that they can accumulate points to redeem them, and you get them to do something good that has a great social tie into it, I think is fantastic. But as I lose my voice, thank you both for coming on New Theory Radio. Really appreciate it. Amol, if people want to connect with you, what's your social handle?
They can just go to my website, animaltala.com, or just at animaltala.
And then Kamika, if they want to connect with you.
Yes, so obviously I'm going to plug Vision Brampton.
Yes.
Follow at Vision Brampton. If you want to connect with me directly, at Kamika Sly, S-L-Y, Kamika is my IG handle.
Excellent. And yes, we'll be right back with more New Theory Radio here on News Talk Saga 960 AM. And we are back here on New Theory Radio on News Talk Saga 960 AM. My name is Nav Nanma. I am your host. And this is the show where we theorize on all things current affairs, pop culture, and everyday life. I want to give a huge shout out to Vision Brampton yet again for coming on the show. Fantastic conversation. Go support their initiative on September 5th at the Brampton City Hall. It's a civic action forum. You do not want to miss it, as it's encouraging the youth to go out and vote in October for the upcoming federal election. But switching gears a little bit, if you know me, you know I'm a huge wrestling fan. I've been a fan my entire life. I've had a lot of I've had wrestlers on the show before. I've even talked to Mike Richards about pro wrestling on his show. And I had a blast actually last week being a part of the Summerslam festivities. Summerslam is like the second biggest event that takes place each year for WWE. It's like the summer equivalent of WrestleMania. And they took over Toronto. So I actually managed to score a couple of interviews with some of the talent. The talent, actually, I got a chance to do a phone interview with Robert Roode, who's actually from Peterborough. And we're going to play his interview in just a few moments. And actually with Robert, we were able to theorize about wrestling popularity, because it seems like there's a lot of popularity or a lot of interest in pro wrestling nowadays. So I wanted to get his perspective on that. That interview then is followed by an interview with another pro wrestler that's very familiar with a lot of you that follow wrestling, and that's WWE superstar, one half of the Hardy Boys tag team, Matt Hardy, or Broken Matt Hardy. What's great about Matt Hardy is he's done a fantastic job in really reinventing himself. He's had a career for over 20 years, and he's been able to change up his persona, become very relevant in any conversation when it comes to pro wrestling. And I wanted to get his perspective on that, because I thought it was great, a great way to get some insight as to how people go about reinventing themselves when they've been in the same industry for so long. And then we're going to cap off this first portion with another interview that I did with an up-and-coming pro wrestling star who's making quite the noise right now on SmackDown, specifically on Tuesdays, and that's Buddy Murphy, a favorite of our New Theory Radio photographer, Amit Nanwo, aka at colorblind photography _ on Instagram. What's been great great about Buddy is, he's been somebody that every time he's on TV, he really takes advantage of the time that's allocated to him. So I wanted to get his theory on the importance of snagging opportunities and why, no matter big or small, why you just need to go after it and give it your all. So we are going to start things off by playing these interviews back to back, and then when we come back from commercial break, I'm going to introduce the second set of interviews that I did, which were also very exciting, that came out of SummerSlam weekend. So enjoy Bobby Roode, Matt Hardy, and Buddy Murphy here on News Talk Saga 960 AM. And we are back here on New Theory Radio, live on News Talk Saga 960 AM, the show where we theorize on all things current affairs, pop culture, and everyday life. It's no secret that we are deep into SummerSlam weekend, which means the who's who of professional wrestling are currently among us here within the GTA, and I'm very humbled to be joined by our next guest. He has over 20 years of professional wrestling experience and many accomplishments within the WWE, including former NXT champion, former US champion, former tag champion, as well as most recently former 24/7 champion. And what actually makes him really good is the fact that he's a Canadian boy. He's from Peterborough, and I'm super excited to have him on the show. Please welcome the glorious one himself, WWE wrestler Robert Roode. Robert, how's it going, man?
Oh, I'm absolutely glorious, as you know, but I'm great. I'm back home here, and it's good to be able to suitcase for the next week. So it's great being a part of SummerSlam here in Toronto for sure.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, it's kind of cool that that Peterborough is only, about 45 to an hour drive from Scotiabank, so you could literally just head home right after the show.
Yeah, depending on, of course, the terrible Toronto traffic, you never know how long it's going to take you, but either way, I mean, this is home for me.
Awesome. So we're so happy to have you back. And again, here on New Theory Radio, we like to theorize on all things current affairs, pop culture, and everyday life. And this is actually a wrestling-themed episode. And I wanted to, before we got into any topics, I wanted to ask you, what does it mean to you to be back in Canada, to be back in front of your hometown? I actually was in attendance at NXT TakeOver a few years ago when you and Sean Spears had that match at the Scotiabank. And I must say, it was like a battle of Ontario, but there was so much pride in that, being in that arena and being able to see you guys go at it in such a big stage.
Yeah, it's always great to be able to perform it, in your own backyard, basically. I mean, I think any WWE superstar could tell you the same thing, whether you're from Toronto. I mean, one of the shows in Houston, guys are from Houston, and guys are from Tampa, and when we have shows in Tampa, it's a home game. And, it's always, like I said, whenever you don't have to live out of a suitcase and sleep in a hotel bed, it's always a plus, especially when you're on the road, 365 days a year. And of course, being able to, the nostalgia of it, being able to perform in an area or a building that you grew up, going to shows and watching as a kid is always cool too.
Exactly. And, I wanted to also, just get a brief intro regarding your background in case there's any listeners that aren't too familiar with how you got your start. You had been sort of in the wrestling game for, just about 20 years. I think last year is when you celebrated, 20 years since your debut. What really got you started into pro wrestling, and what really inspired you at such an early age?
I think it was just being a fan. I was a fan from the time I was 7 or 8 years old. I remember watching the first WrestleMania and falling in love with it. And, of course, growing up in Canada, especially Peterborough, is such a hockey hotbed. I grew up playing hockey, and I learned to skate before I think I was able to walk. So, I grew up, of course, like every other kid, wanting to play in the NHL, but the dream of being a pro wrestler was always in my sights as well. Whenever it was on television, whether it was, Saturday night's main event, or if it was, Wrestling Challenge at noon hour on Saturdays and Sundays, or, especially the old Maple Leaf Gardens televised show that was always on at 7 p.m. right before Hockey Night in Canada. I would sit in front of my TV and I'd watch all of it and just, just fall in love with the characters, the Hulk Hogan's, the Macho Man Randy Savage's, guys like that. It was just something about it. I can't pinpoint what it was, but I knew at the end of the day that I needed to do it, I needed to try it, and I wanted to be a part of it.
No, exactly. And again, I think it's awesome that you're now officially sort of a part of that Canadian wrestling lineage that's been able to go out there and really represent the country and on such a major stage. And that actually goes into my first topic. So like I mentioned earlier, here on New Theory Radio, we like to theorize on all things current affairs, pop culture, and everyday life. And because this is a wrestling-centric episode, I wanted to get your perspective as to what's your theory on why Canada is such a hotbed when it comes to pro wrestling. Obviously, we have the Hart family that's really pretty much wrestling royalty that's based in Calgary. We have sort of the Maple Leaf Garden shows that you talked about with Jack Tunney back in the day. There's obviously a strong lineage of wrestling in the Atlantic, as well as, even when you go out, further out west. Why do you feel like Canada is such a hotbed when it comes to pro wrestling, and why do you think we've really made it our own here in our own home country?
Well, I don't know what it is. I mean, when you think about it, the U.S. is a hotbed just as much, I think. I think it's just that the focus we put on the Canadian superstars because we are Canadian. As Canadians, we always root for our own. And that's one of the things I always found coming back to Canada. No matter if, people hated me or they loved me, I always was respected whenever I came back to Canada when I was performing. So, but yeah, you think about the names that have been so successful in this business. Obviously the Hart Foundation, the Hart family, Brett and all of his brothers, and you have nowadays you have Kevin Owens, who's doing so well, Sami Zayn, myself. Trish Stratus is a name that's been heard about the last couple of weeks. He's coming back out of retirement for Summerslam. Edge, Christian, Jericho. All these guys have really made a name for wrestling here in sports entertainment here in Canada, and it's really an honor for me to be thrown in with all those names.
Yeah, because I would say, just as a wrestling fan myself, I feel like we had such a I'd say we've always had a strong wrestling Canadian representation within the WWE. But I would say in most recent years, I feel like there's been a bit of a reemergence with some of the new talent like yourself, like Kevin Owens, like Sami Zayn, sort of popping up onto mainstream televisions, that we're getting this, getting the same feeling back that we had when we had, Brett, Owen, the Hart Foundation, and later we had Edge and Christian and Trish and Val Venus, where we had such strong representation from our country. I feel like it's coming back, and especially when you look at the Summerslam card and the Canadian influence on it, I think it's awesome that it's coming back to us, right?
Yeah, it's great. And like I said, just to be mentioned in all those names is a huge honor, and we all, and I think I can speak for all of us Canadians, we always love to perform here in Canada, especially in Toronto.
Yeah, awesome. Just have a couple more things before we let you go, Robert. Wanted to also get your perspective on sort of the wrestling scene in general within, not just within Canada, but within across the world. It seems like now we've seen this global, localized approach taking place. Obviously within the WWE, we got NXT UK. Obviously, there's things blowing up in Japan. There's new wrestling. There's always wrestling in Mexico that's making a lot of noise. We're seeing places like India now getting behind pro wrestling. Why do you think there's this sudden popularity boom taking place, and why do you think it's so much easier now for a fan to hop on pro wrestling than it was before?
I don't know what that. The second question, I'm not really sure why. I think it's just becoming more popular again. I remember when I was a fan in the mid '80s, late '80s, and in the Attitude Era. I was just listening to something the other day, and the television ratings in 1998, 97 were just out of this world. The ratings will never see those days again. It was 9 million viewers or something it hit at one point. I think it's just another resurgence of the business, and I think there's just fans all over the world. I think the WWE has done a great job of presenting the WWE in such a way that fans, young kids to older people alike are just connecting with what we're doing, and we're now as a part of the WWE, we're traveling internationally more than we've ever done before. Going to places like Saudi Arabia on a regular basis. Doing our European tours twice a year. I know that the SmackDown crew is heading over to Australia, stopping in Hawaii, and then I believe they're going to China and South America, I believe, all in the next couple months. I mean, it's such a global, it's gone global, like, and more so than ever before. So I think it's just giving the fans an opportunity all over the world just to kind of connect and to cling on to what the WWE is doing on a weekly and almost daily basis now, especially with the internet.
Yeah, like social media is definitely allowing us to follow along, especially when it comes to most recently the 24/7 title that just got launched by WWE. It's great to see how it doesn't just live on TV. You know, you obviously can follow a lot of the shenanigans and a lot of the storylines on social. That makes it fully integrated. So yeah, to your point, I think it's just readily available now more than ever. One last thing, Robert, I got to ask you, man. A couple of months ago, you debuted a new look with your mustache. I thought it was going to be a new trend here in Canada, and then all of a sudden you're back to the beard. I'm actually a beard guy myself, but when I saw your stash, I was really considering it. Do you think the stash will pop up again, maybe in time for November?
Well, I mean, one thing I've learned in 20 years in this business, you never say never, but I don't really see that happening anytime soon. I think it was just one of those things. I thought, hey, why not just let's give it a shot? But it was, the mustache was great for Monday nights, but then when you fly home Tuesdays and you have to live with it, and look at yourself in the mirror and the kids and your wife, it's a tough deal. You know what I mean? So, but no, I mean, I mean, at the end of the day, the mustache doesn't make the man, right? So it was cool for a while. Never say never. It may come back, but if I was a betting man, I highly doubt it.
We are back here on New Theory Radio on News Talk Saga 960 AM, and I'm joined by a wrestling legend, someone who is a tag team specialist, and you might have known him from his Version 1 days, or even most recently as the Broken Matt Hardy, and I'm so excited to be speaking with him, as I think he's doing amazing when it comes to really promoting his character and really getting out there and really taking ownership over creativity when it comes to the pro wrestling world. I'm joined by Matt Hardy. Matt, thanks so much for joining us here at Summerslam in Toronto.
Yeah, man, of course. I've had a great time here. Toronto is a really beautiful city. It's actually one of the first occasions I've had some time in the city to hang out to.
Oh, awesome. What I guess, what have you been up to?
I mean, just while I've been here, I've just been downtown. I got to walk around a little bit, nice. Do some sightseeing, take in a couple nice restaurants. So it's been fun.
Awesome. Well, one thing I really appreciate about you is you've done a great job over the last, I'd say, 15 years of reinventing yourself. Whether it is the Hardy Boys, whether it was Version 1, whether it was suddenly this plane flying over us, whether it was the Broken character, which we did see in multiple different promotions. What is the motivation behind being able to change up your career and being able to become current? Because one thing that me and my photographer Amit always talk about is every time we think about what's popular in pro wrestling, you're always in the conversation and you always seem to be at the forefront of what's going viral. What's been your strategy?
I mean, my strategy, especially as I've gotten older, I try and keep like a pulse on what's going on, like in the world, in pop culture. Now, obviously, social media. Even when I came back to wrestling, I realized I kind of have to change. I had to change up what I did some, because like we did so many great athletic matches with the TLCs, the tables, ladders, chairs, and we worked so hard. And then as you get older and your body's beat up, you have to become more entertainment driven, because you can't do the things you could do when you were 24, 25. Mm-hmm. So that was part of the whole mindset when I started developing Broken Matt Hardy. And then on top of that, like, I watched a lot of the television shows when I was away from wrestling the first time. Like the True Bloods and Dexters, and there's so much amazing TV out there. Some of those things inspired, and I pulled from them into Broken Matt Hardy, and I was just like, well, what if we could take some of the current cool TV content and kind of instill that into a character, and then make it over the top, almost do some cinematic stuff. And it followed Deadpool was a big inspiration as well, too. There was some of that, because like Broken Matt Hardy was a character, and is a character that looks at the audience and kind of breaks the fourth wall and winks at them and hits inside jokes, and you understand that everyone's having fun, and you understand what the deal is. And even more recently, since I've been off TV for a while, like I've just seen there's this trend on social media, because now people have a voice. They will complain about anything, even if it's not really bad. And that was the inspiration for the "You Don't Understand How Hard It Is to Be Matt Hardy." Yeah,
which is actually the new series that you've been launching recently.
Yes, correct.
Awesome. Well, Matt, we apparently have to wrap up, but thanks so much for joining us here at SummerSlam weekend. And anything you want to tell the fans up in Brampton and Mississauga?
No, I'm just happy to be here. I love being up in this area, and I wish I was on the SummerSlam card. Next time we're here, hopefully I will be.
Awesome, and I'm sure you will be. Thank you so much. We're back here on New Theory Radio, here live on News Talk Saga 960 AM, and yes, we're knee-deep into SummerSlam weekend, and it's an honor to be joined by one of my favorites currently on WWE television. He is the best-kept secret and somebody who definitely steals the show every time he enters a ring across all arenas. It is Australia's own Buddy Murphy. Buddy, thanks so much for joining us here in Toronto. What a beautiful day that we have out here.
Yeah, man, doesn't get much better than this. It actually kind of reminds me of back home in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Making me a little sad.
I'm sure we can probably find some surfing for you somewhere around here.
It's very similar, man. Very similar. The water and then like the high-rise buildings, it makes me miss home a lot.
Awesome. Well, one thing I want to ask you, buddy, is you obviously have had such an interesting career, starting in NXT in a tag team, then eventually getting called up to 205 Live. And I'll be honest, when you got called up to 205 Live, I think around that same time, my photographer Amit and I actually caught you at NXT here in Mississauga, facing Ricochet. And I was like telling my brother, hey, Buddy Murphy used to be in NXT, now he's in 205 Live. And that actually got us to watch 205 Live because you were just having killer matches. You're definitely someone that's been able to take advantage of their spot no matter where you are in the card. And I feel like that's a great mentality across any industry, across the board. What's your theory on that? On showing up no matter what and making sure that when you have eyes on you that you take advantage of everything around you?
Yeah, man, I'm always one of those guys. So even when I was a young fella, I started watching wrestling when I was 8.
Yeah.
So always been a massive fan of it, and then kind of watched it as I grew. My family always thought it would be just a little bit of fad. Eventually I'd grow out of it, which didn't happen, obviously. Yeah. So, but I would always, watch it, love it. It was it is and was my first love. So, eventually the fad I never grew out of. Went into high school, still was in love with it. And then I found a way to get into it. And being a guy that I wasn't great at school. I didn't enjoy school. I was good at sports, but nothing had my attention like wrestling did. So I knew that if I was going to give this a real shot, that I needed to put my best foot forward. And I have, and I've had that mentality from kind of day one, that wrestling, no matter what, I'll always put my best foot forward, whether I have to jump off a Tron or have 1 minute, 6 minutes, or 25 minutes. I'm putting my best foot forward and to make that the best that I possibly can. So that's just kind of my mentality, with what I do with this. It's my first love.
Yeah, love it, man. Love it, because you definitely sense the passion when it comes to how you actually describe it. Actually, just to touch on a bit of a storyline, we obviously saw you this week. Roman Reigns approached you regarding who attacked him. What's your theory? You obviously saw Rowan. I guess he was a prime suspect. What's your theory as to why Rowan and Bryan maybe conspired against Roman there?
So I get that question a lot, and and let's just put it this way. The best kept secret's my nickname, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that kind of directs it at myself, yeah? But what is the best kept secret? Mm-hmm. Is it that? Mm-hmm. Or is there a new best kept secret? Mm-hmm. Because the whole world's starting to know what the original best kept secret is, just how, talented and how good I am in the ring, but I'm still calling myself the best kept secret. So what is it? Was it Rowan? Roman did ask for a name. Yeah. I gave him a name. But I don't think I'm going to go in much further than that. Okay. Because people are already, kind of making fun of me and saying I snitched and whatnot, but Roman asked for a name. I gave him a name, so you guys can take that and run with it for as long as you guys want, because I'm sure you guys will.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us here at SummerSlam weekend. Really appreciate it, and hopefully you can catch some waves later here at Lake Ontario.
I wish, man. I wish. A lot of media. It's SummerSlam week's big week, so awesome. We'll see if I can get to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate it. Now we're going to move on to the second set of interviews that I was able to conduct, and we're going to switch it and go to the women's division. And I managed to have some great conversations with the likes of Fire and Desire, which is the tag team featuring Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville, as well as the legend herself. She is a WWE Hall of Famer, Trish Stratus, who was definitely somebody that I was trying not to fanboy too much when I was interviewing her, because I was a huge fan of hers when I was growing up. She is not only a big figure within the professional wrestling world, she's a big Canadian celebrity as well. So she was having her farewell match at SummerSlam. So I managed to talk to her a few moments before the big day. And yes, with Mandy, we were theorizing about women's wrestling because it has been on the upswing for the last few years. So I got her thoughts on additional titles being introduced to the profession. With Sonya Deville, Sonya is actually a member of the LGBTQ community, and it's no secret that pro wrestling hasn't always been friendly to that community. So I wanted to get her theory on why that was the case and how she predicts it changing for the future. And she also said, I can't even talk. She also shed some light on MMA fighters going into pro wrestling, because in the last little bit, we've seen the likes of Ronda Rousey, Cain Velasquez, even Brock Lesnar, who was in wrestling and then went to MMA and then went back to wrestling, dabble from MMA to pro wrestling and try some different careers. So I got Sonya's perspective on that because she used to be an MMA fighter. And then with Trish Stratus, it was a great conversation. We talked about two things. We talked about legacy, and then we also talked about parenthood, because Trish is a very active parent, and she managed to share some perspectives, even for myself, because I am going to be becoming a parent by the end of this year. So I managed to get Trish's advice and her theories on parenthood and what it means to her. So enjoy the next set of interviews, and then we'll be right back soon after. We are back here on New Theory Radio, live on News Talk Saga 960 AM, and now I'm very lucky to be joined by one of the most profiled superstars currently on WWE television. She is part of the tag team Fire and Desire with Sonya Deville, and I guess she's also God's greatest creation.
That's
It's
right.
Mandy Rose. Mandy, welcome to Toronto. I feel like you brought the beautiful weather with you.
Thank you. I know. Someone else said that before. I'm kind of believing it now. No, it's beautiful here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Wanted to get your perspective, because obviously within WWE, we've seen the women's revolution, whatever you like to call it, pop up. And this year was the introduction of the women's tag team titles. And it's no secret, you and your tag team with Sonya Deville are a driving force within that, having a fantastic performance back at the Elimination Chamber back in February. What's your theory on where women's wrestling is going to be going? And do you think eventually we'll see other titles introduced, like a women's secondary title, or maybe the women's version of the Intercontinental title, based on the success of what we're seeing with both of the brand-specific titles as well as the tag titles?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's you know, the bar has been raised, obviously, with the women, and there's definitely why not have all these different titles come with the women, right? It's amazing. It makes us more competitive and more driven to get to that spot. You know, obviously seeing the women main event WrestleMania this year, which was amazing. Yeah, it's been great. I think it's a great time to be a woman in sports and in not just WWE, in sports entertainment as well. So I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we see many more titles come.
Excellent. Anyone that pays attention to your social media knows that you're like a fitness guru. What's your fitness regime like heading into SummerSlam this weekend, especially here in Toronto?
Basically, I'm all about just like trying to stay consistent and balancing it. And I've been doing heavy lifting for quite some time now. So, I have my days where I can cheat, and it's not going to affect me, that bad, because I do like food. I love food, and so it's just training, still getting my cardio and my lifting in every day, and just balancing it. We have a lot of appearances and a lot of media and a lot of exciting things all week, so it's hard to kind of get that time in to do it, but you just got to make the time.
Have you had a poutine yet as a cheat meal?
I did, but it wasn't that good.
Really? Where'd you get it from?
Gosh, what was the restaurant called?
Actually, you don't have to mention them if you don't want to put them on blast.
Well, no, I just actually don't even remember. It was like 2 days ago.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't that great, though. I'm going to have to get better poutine.
Yeah, we'll have to give you some recommendations later, because poutine here is a dime a dozen, but sometimes you just might not get the right one.
Yeah, it was like okay. It wasn't like bad, but it was just okay.
One last thing, and this is actually a question from my photographer, Amit. He's a big Drake fan. He wants to know, was the team Fire and Desire based off of the track Fire and Desire by Drake off of Views?
That's funny. It wasn't, but we could totally say it was for sure. I'm a big Drake fan too.
Awesome. Okay, well, guess it was worth a try. Thanks so much, Mandy, for joining us. If we can just get a quick plug for the show as well as the station, that'd be awesome. If you can just say, hi, this is God's Greatest Creation, Mandy Rose. You're listening to New Theory Radio on Saga 960.
Hey guys, WWE superstar Mandy Rose, also known as God's Greatest Creation. Make sure you guys go check out New Theory Radio on Saga 960.
Awesome, you got it right. Love it. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it, Mandy. We are back here on New Theory Radio live on News Talk Saga 960 AM, and now I'm joined by the other half of Fire and Desire. She is the submission specialist herself, always telling people to put their hair up and square up. I don't have long enough hair to do that, but one day I'll definitely grow it the next time I see her. It's Sonya Deville. Sonya, thanks so much for joining us here. Summerslam weekend. It is a hot one outside.
It is so hot, but it's beautiful. We're overlooking the harbor right here in Toronto, and wow, we couldn't have a better view. Thanks for having me.
Is this your first time in Toronto?
No, I've been several times with the WWE, and it's stayed near and dear to my heart. It's one of my favorite cities.
Excellent. You are, definitely when it comes to tag team wrestling in the women's division, you and Mandy are definitely a force to be reckoned with. But what I really enjoy about you as a pro wrestler is really just your message around positivity and inclusivity. You are a strong advocate within the LGBTQ community, and it's no secret that pro wrestling hasn't always been friendly to this group. So now that we're seeing more inclusivity in regards to the types of characters, as well as the fact that a lot of this is being embraced, what's your theory on that, and where do you hope to see this go in the future?
I think it's endless. Obviously, inclusivity in the world wasn't always as accepting as it is, and I think WWE being the forefront of social media and where the world is going, we have so much influence on the world. We are one of the largest entertainment conglomerates in the world, and I think it's really important that we spread the message of positivity, inclusivity, and love, and I think I definitely can help with that, and I'm happy to be an advocate.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And hey, you're doing a fantastic job, so keep going. One last question I wanted to ask you. It's no secret that we've seen a bit of an influx of MMA fighters go into pro wrestling. No secret that you yourself are one of those individuals. Ronda Rousey was one. We've even seen Cain Velasquez dabble. We've seen Conor McGregor mention here and there that he'd love to get in the ring. What's your theory on that? Why do you think MMA fighters are being intrigued by the pro wrestling world?
Well, I think it's a natural transition, MMA being such a physical sport, but also being about entertaining the crowd and selling tickets and the charisma and all that stuff you see in Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey and how successful they were because of their personalities and their, really their charisma. Mm-hmm. And so transferring over is really kind of a natural thing. Also, I mean, time is limited getting punched in the face every day for a living. I mean, you can only get so many concussions, you can only take so much damage, and I think obviously what we do is dangerous, but it is kind of like a nice transition and something to do after the fact.
Excellent. Well, we're going to wrap this up. I wanted to thank you again for joining us here for SummerSlam weekend. And is there anything you want to kind of say to any of the fans in Brampton and Mississauga?
Hi, thank you so much for all the love and support. But I was just like, hi, bye. No, thanks so much for all the love and support. I love all you guys, and you guys are what makes this job so worth it, and all the long days and travel hours worth it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, and enjoy SummerSlam weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Test. We are back here on New Theory Radio on News Talk Saga 960 AM, and I'm so honored to be joined by a wrestling legend here based in Toronto. She is the Queen of Stratisfaction, and I'm gonna try not to fanboy too much because this is the Attitude Era memories coming back to me right now. But it is Trish Stratus. How are you?
I'm great, and you're doing a great job. I didn't think you were going crazy or acting weird. It's great.
I got to keep it professional, right? So this is surreal because so my brother is actually my photographer, and him and I were in attendance at Unforgiven back in 2006. Okay. We saw you beat Lita with the sharpshooter. It was probably the best farewell I've ever seen in pro wrestling, and we're both going to be there on Sunday for your comeback match. So it's, I got to ask you, we've seen you do a lot of tag team action over the last few years, heading into your first singles match with a competitor like Charlotte Flair. What's the mindset right now?
Okay, the task itself seems daunting for sure, and there's moments where I'm like, what have I got myself into? But I've done everything I can to prepare for this. I've watched tape, I've seen her stuff, I've gone back as far as NXT stuff. I mean, and I've watched her journey the entire way, so I'm, well aware of her stuff. And for me, I've just been in the ring, like between momming and being in the ring. That's all I've been doing for the last few weeks, and I've tapped into something deeper in me, and sparked the competitive fire in me again, and it's like a personal challenge to come out here and like, can I do this? And I want to prove it, of course, to the world and to Charlotte Flair, but to myself as well.
Excellent.
And that's been a great driving point.
Is there added pressure being that it's in front of your hometown?
It's a good thing. It's not a pressure like a bad thing. It's a positive.
Awesome.
It's something that I'm using. They give me that energy that I can use, and I'm going to use it to my advantage out there. And it's like, and I've literally been fueled by adrenaline this last few weeks, and so I'm looking forward to that energy, that excitement, and that passion from the Toronto crowd. Which it really is something special. Yeah,
it's definitely one of the most anticipated matches at SummerSlam this year. And you mentioned that you obviously are a mom now, and I'm actually having my first kid in December. So my sister, who's probably going to be watching this, she actually follows you on Instagram quite a bit, so she always keeps tabs on what you're doing. Kind of creeperish, but not really. But what advice would you give someone like me that's heading into fatherhood and that's going to have their first kid? Because I look at your Instagram and you're doing a fantastic job, and it's definitely motivating in regards to the kind of parent that I want to be as well.
Oh, awesome! Good to hear. It's life changing, obviously for the plus. It's like it is. You'll find a love that you've never had before. Everything you do now is for a different purpose. Everything that your life goals are now geared differently, and it's the best job in the world. It is honestly, you'll see, it's life changing, and it's also hard. It's also hard. You'll lose your social life for a little while there.
I figured, yeah.
Especially your wife. The girls seem to lose a little bit more than the guys, and that's kind of cool. Like when you mentioned, just keep yourself. Tell your wife to remember who she is. You get lost in this motherhood sometimes. You're like, who am I? And so that's something. This has been a neat journey for me to have my mom had all the time and come back and kind of find my inner Trish Stratus, if you will.
Excellent.
And it's been really cool. So good luck with that.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Can't go wrong with advice from Trish Stratus, right? Last question before we wrap this one up. Let's say Sunday you come out with the big W here in the hometown. Is there a potential for one last run for one of the championships on either Raw or SmackDown?
I don't know. I feel like this is like a perfect way for me to just have my, you said this is your comeback match. I think it's also my farewell match.
Oh, okay.
I feel like this is a good moment for me to be like, thank you to the business, thank you to all the amazing fans who've supported me. It's just a perfect moment, and I don't think you can trump it. So I just feel like it's a good moment of finality for me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a good way to kind of bookends, which is great. Absolutely. Awesome. Trish, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm super excited I got to interview you, and best of luck on Sunday. Me and my photographer will be watching.
Fanboy, do it.
I can't. This is. I'll be banned for life. But thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And yes, that was the legend herself, Trish Stratus. Had a great opportunity to interview her last week during SummerSlam weekend, as well as Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, Matt Hardy, Robert Roode, and Buddy Murphy. So a big thank you to WWE as well as Greg and Amy for helping me out with those interviews. Really appreciate it. But before we wrap up this week's episode, I'm going to call on to the actual show itself. A New Theory Radio alumni, somebody who was on my Theories on Fatherhood episode, and he has a wonderful life drawing event taking place this coming Tuesday. And for us, once you've been on New Theory Radio once, you're family of the show, and I'm very excited to have him back on. It is my homie Ren Thomas. Ren, thanks so much for joining us, man. Big event coming up on Tuesday.
Yes, definitely, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell the listeners, man, what's going on. You've obviously been very busy with a lot of the art that's been coming out. I see you on the Instagram, absolutely killing it. I also see you being quite the father as well. So what's new and what's going on for Tuesday when it comes to the life drawing event?
Yeah, so definitely trying to be the jack of all trades here, father of the year, artist of the year, those. But for Tuesday, I'm running an event called Life Drawing Sessions with Ren Thomas Art. So this will be the second time we're running it. Last month was a launch, and it's really just bringing a new experience to live drawing for artists and art enthusiasts from any level, from expert to right down to beginner or anybody who just sort of feels that they want to try something new. There's going to be complimentary wine and refreshments, so that'll be great. We just want to bring like this new sort of culture to the life drawing experience, and sort of adding that to the Saga area.
I love it, man, because I've actually seen quite a lot of these drawing events pop up. You know, there's these social painting experiences that are taking place where people are, buying dinner and then they're getting a canvas and, they're following, an artist in residence that's maybe painting something and they got to follow each of the movements and they walk out with their own canvas. Why do you feel like this arts facilitation is becoming quite the social experience nowadays?
It's right down to just being human. Like to create this is the most sort of human experience, and have somebody feel that they can come in and create something that's of their own. That's really what I think the launch of it is. And what we're trying to do with this event is have the sort of non-facilitated, non-instructed, and then this sort of feel that they can come in and sort of create something and be able to sort of share that with sort of like-minded people. Creating is pretty much the idea of what I think is really stepping up.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, man. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And how is this kind of tying into everything else that you're working on? Is there anything else kind of outside of this event that we should all be looking at? Because with your exhibits, you typically go all over the place.
Definitely. So I got a few things coming up for the summertime. I'm working on a project right now. Little tidbit about that. It's called "I Can Turn You Into Art," and really just working with bodies and women, and creating this atmosphere where they can have a mirror image of themselves and sort of see themselves from a different perspective, something that they may not be able to see just by looking in the mirror themselves, and then having that be something where people can sort of look into it and then be able to see that, well, I can see myself in this, or I can see somebody else who I know, or somebody else who I'm associated with, and really just create this conversation of humanity and what it really means to be human, and to be just be an everyday regular person, right? And that is something that we have to live in within our skin every day. So having people, especially women, feel that they can be accepted in their skin exactly the way they are. This is sort of the premise and majority of my project.
I love that, man. I love that a lot. And, again, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing all these details with us here on New Theory Radio on Saga 960. Again, give us one last plug as to where people can get tickets for or information on the event on Tuesday when it comes to life drawings.
Yes. So they can go on Eventbrite or on my Instagram. That's RENZZZART, Ren's Art. The link to the bio is in there as well. You can reach out to me and just come out. It's a drop-in session. This would be a real cool, relaxed, and awesome experience to really take part in.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Ren. Really appreciate it. And best of luck on Tuesday, man. Always a pleasure to have you on. We got to get you back in studio soon.
Definitely. We need that halfway mark all up for fatherhood.
Yeah. We'll put in the calendar by the end of the year, and both you and Ryan can check in on me and see how I'm coping for that first month of fatherhood. Take care, man. Thank you.
I got you, brother. All right, take it easy.
Cheers. Yes, that was Ren Thomas. He's running a fantastic event. We'll share those details within the podcast description. And this officially concludes this week's edition of New Theory Radio. Big shouts to Vision Brampton. Big shouts to WWE for all the stars that came on, including Trish Stratus. And again, a special thanks to Ren Thomas. You will hear all of us next week. But before that, check us out on social media. It's at New Theory Radio on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And at NNanwa on Twitter. And at NavNanwa on Instagram. And next week, I got the Young Degenerates on the show, so you do not want to miss it, and you will hear all of us next time. Peace.
You're listening to News Talk Saga 960, also streaming live on saga960am.ca.